it started off with an innocent question. Anybody else notice Firefox Labs doesn't work unless you've enabled telemetry? I had not noticed, but a quick Moz regression later, and I found the changes starting in Firefox 138. The change in behavior is simple. Disabling data collection on Firefox Desktop removes Firefox Labs from the settings. I ran the released version of Firefox to confirm that this is indeed the released behavior. I figured that there might be mention in the Firefox Nightly News blog. Unfortunately, after looking through the last few posts, I saw no mention of this change to Labs. I was surprised that Mozilla was now locking features behind data collection, and I went looking for communication from Mozilla announcing the change. I reached out to the Sumo chat and to Mozilla's press inquiry forum to see if I was missing something. The chat room responded that this was announced in the enterprise release notes for version 138. That's a pretty strange place to put this note, since this isn't an enterprise feature and 138 isn't an ESR release. The next ESR release is 140. The enterprise release notes say, Firefox Labs is now controlled by Nimbus, our testing platform. So disabling telemetry also disables Firefox Labs. That sounds pretty definitive, but it doesn't explain why it had to happen that way. So I looked more closely at the bugs where the changes were made. I was hoping I could understand a bit more about the reason for why data collection was required. I soon found a bug where Mike Capley reported the new behavior as a regression. Mike said, based on the regressing bug, I don't think this was deliberate. Just because Firefox Labs is tied to Nimbus doesn't mean it should be tied to telemetry. Unfortunately, it wasn't a mistake. The bug report was closed within the hour as intended behavior. In doing the research for this video, I eventually found the Support Mozilla page where they now say that Firefox Labs will be missing if telemetry is disabled. This is a pretty massive change for Firefox. Mozilla is now feature gating new features behind data collection. Firefox has been open source since the beginning, and given its open development process, pre-release builds have always been available. There's even a nightly build with the latest changes. Ideally, what happens is that the latest changes are released to a smaller population of enthusiasts, so that issues are found before they are released to a wider audience. You can see this from the nightly news blog, where features like vertical tabs were previewed without any mention of needing to enable data collection in Firefox. That is changing. On May 13th, Mozilla posted this about Firefox Labs. We created Firefox Labs to get features into users' hands earlier, said Karen Kim, Senior Product Manager at Mozilla. It's a safe space where people can turn things on, play around, and help us learn faster. In the past, testing out new ideas usually meant downloading special builds like Nightly or digging into advanced settings. That's not for everyone. Firefox Labs makes it way easier. Just head to your Firefox settings, flip a switch, and try something new. They also tell us how to provide feedback on what is being built. On Mozilla Connect, the post doesn't mention that you need to enable data collection to participate. This appears to be the beginning of the privacy invasion that many predicted with Mozilla's new terms of use. It's not like Mozilla doesn't already have a mechanism for studying user behavior in Firefox. Firefox has studies. I've been a participant in a whole bunch of them. Mozilla introduced studies as controlled A/B tests built right into Firefox, and they say that they allow us to compare proposed changes to the default experience in Firefox for small, representative populations before shipping those changes to everyone. Once staff members think the features are good enough for release, Mozilla can run a study against a larger segment of Firefox users to understand whether the feature appeals to a wider audience. Studies have always required data collection, and that makes sense. You can't study something very easily without measuring it. That was okay, because the features could be enabled without ever opting into the study. You could download the software, test it, post about it on Connect or Reddit, file bugs, without ever needing to be in the study. With what Mozilla is doing now, you aren't going to be able to access the latest changes without enabling data collection. It's been a few months since Mozilla released its terms of use for Firefox, and locking features behind data collection seems to be exactly the kind of thing that they wanted to enable. You might recall that after the outcry over the terms, Mozilla posted an update to their announcement to say, "Update. We've seen a little confusion about the language regarding licenses, so we want to clear that up. We need a license to allow us to make some of the basic functionality of Firefox possible. Without it, we couldn't use information typed into Firefox, for example. It does not give us ownership of your data or a right to use it for anything other than what is described in the privacy notice." While I said at the time that that didn't make sense, the lab's change may help us understand what they were thinking. They seem to be talking about using information from experiments in Firefox. If Mozilla wants to run experiments on basic functionality in Firefox, of course it needs pervasive access to user data. Virtually any feature can be experimented with and has access to your data. Unfortunately, it seems that Mozilla's vision for how to build Firefox in the future is to build it as spyware. When introducing studies, Matt Grimes pointed out a key insight into early adopters. He said, "Test Pilot is a heavily biased audience. It is predominantly early adopters and highly technical users. Just because a feature appeals to Test Pilot users doesn't mean it will generalize to the broader Firefox population." That makes a lot of sense and explains why studies exist. With the new Firefox Labs, Mozilla changes the way the feature funnel works. Instead of more technical early adopters testing new functionality, less technical early adopters will opt into new features. Unlike the past, Mozilla knows that everyone is forced into data collection, so they can see how everyone uses the feature. That is less likely with a more technical audience. The problem being solved here seems to be that the people who give feedback on new Firefox features are too technical. Perhaps they are too disinterested in spyware. If Mozilla wanted to build features without privacy advocates looking over their shoulders, it'd be pretty useful to cut out everyone who objects to data collection. And that's exactly what they're doing. If the purpose of a system is what it does, the purpose of Mozilla's new terms of use and the changes to Firefox Labs is to develop Firefox as spyware. If Mozilla wanted to make new features available to more people, they could have just made sure Labs appeared in release Firefox. That's already how it worked, so Mozilla didn't have to make any changes. Maybe Mozilla is just tired of people giving negative feedback on Mozilla Connect. Making features inaccessible to a portion of your enthusiastic but technical audience is a pretty good way to silence their objections. Features and products developed in this way will trend towards abuse. All the features are developed using the audiences, behaviors, and feedback of people who are already willing to be spied upon. As more product functionality is gated and developed using this framework, the voice of the people less interested in spyware will be necessarily diminished. The software is simply not being designed for those people, and they are not part of the design loop. Seemingly, Mozilla now wants Mozillians to only have a voice if it comes with your data. One of the thoughts I've had since Mozilla released their terms of use was the feeling that the terms represent a move away from open source. Until Mozilla released their terms of use, basic functionality of Firefox was covered under Firefox's open source license, the MPL. In the announcement of the terms, however, Mozilla said, "Although we've historically relied on our open source license for Firefox and public commitments to you, we are building in a much different technology landscape today. We remain dedicated to making Firefox open source, but we believe that doing so along with an official terms of use will give you more transparency over your rights and permissions as you use Firefox." Make no mistake, the terms are not meant to clarify or make transparent the open source license that Firefox is distributed under. The terms are additional restrictions placed on top of that license. If you follow open source software, you might remember that back in 2017, a company tried to impose additional restrictions to code it was releasing as open source. GR Security had been developing and selling Linux kernel patches on a subscription basis. The code that they were developing and selling was licensed under the GPL version 2, just like Linux. At first, they let customers with a subscription redistribute the patches as is required by the GPL. However, back in 2017,
GR Security said that people who redistributed the code would lose their subscription with them, and would then lose the right to distribute future versions of the patches. Along came Bruce Perens, a well-known open source software advocate and the creator of the open source definition. He looked at the situation and advised people that he believed that the new restrictions that GR Security had placed on the code were against the GPL. In that case, the parties eventually settled without deciding whether the additional restrictions actually violated the license. But the situation helps to show the weirdness happening with the code that Mozilla is releasing as open source in Firefox. Like GR Security, Mozilla is placing additional terms to software that already has a license. With Firefox 138, these terms enforce new restrictions on the usage of some so-called open source features. I think we need to ask ourselves, is Firefox really open source if we have to enable data collection to use open source features? Yes, ordinary people can create a patch to enable those features without needing to submit data to Mozilla, but that wouldn't be Firefox anymore. I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the answers, but I think it is possible that Mozilla could defend this practice legally, even if it seems to be against the spirit of open source. I think that generally, people that use open source software use it to get away from that kind of abuse from other companies. Mozilla doesn't need to do this, and it definitely shouldn't. Many people who want to help build Firefox will willingly opt into data collection, so Mozilla has access to all the data that they need. Beyond that, data collection is already the default, so Mozilla has virtually its entire audience available to experiment on. The only thing that locking features behind data collection does is to help silence feedback from early adopters who aren't opted into data collection. It isn't as if Mozilla doesn't have Mozilla Connect. Mozilla has a way to have peer-to-peer conversations with their user base without needing to spy on them. Mozilla can continue to collect data from most people, and people who don't like that can communicate via other channels. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't matter if people are using Labs features without data collection. Would we rather they use another browser instead? I think that clearly it's better for Firefox to remain genuinely open source, and that people should continue to use Firefox, with or without data collection. I want to take a moment to shout out my first subscriber and someone who has commented on both of my videos. Thanks for being awesome, Everdod. If you like this video, share it with a friend.
Feel free to check out my blog, and if you want to see more, follow me on Mastodon or YouTube. Have a great rest of your day.